Well, hey everybody. Uh, Happy 420. And I wanted to reach out today, talk to you, just share a story about a research experience I had the other day, having to do with ChatGPT, the whole AI business that we've all been hearing so much about. And I wanted to share this story because I found it quite fascinating and maybe illustrative. Also, to just kind of address what I consider to be like the elephant in the room. I don't know if how much this is on your mind or in your life, but as an instructor, this is something that we are now reckoning with and thinking about. There's already sessions being held to talk about ChatGPT and AI and what it can do and what uses it can be put to and how to handle it and think about it. And it's a very new phenomenon. It's only been out, I feel like, for a few months, but more and more it's happening and it's getting more powerful, like by the day, by the minute. So I think we got to sort of talk about it. And unfortunately, I feel like the way it kind of gets rolled out and quickly adopted, it kind of puts professors and students in like adversarial relationship where we have to police and you have to kind of get around. I'm not implying or accusing or anything. I'm assuming that there has been usage of ChatGPT, maybe in tests, maybe in papers. The point is like it's really hard to know. Anyway, I don't want to sort of engage in that adversarial thing. I would much rather have a like dialogic approach to talk about what it is, what it can do, what it can't do, how it's evolving. I'm no expert on this, but I have been writing a little bit in this world, and that's actually the story that I want to share here. So I was I'm wrapping up a paper right now, and it's actually very similar to the stuff we've been reading or we're about to read by Chris Ingraham on algorithmic rhetoric and digital influence and sort of the consequences and kind of what's been happening over the just like a single decade, right? Because things have changed so quickly. Anyway, so I was writing this kind of late in the paper. I was working on this section, and I'll just read you the sentence or two sentences that I was writing because it pushed me into a footnote, and then that footnote is where things got interesting. So the sentence reads, developing enthymemes is a probabilistic exercise involving one's best guess about the souls they are attempting to reach. Importantly, souls are not crafted, but rather courted in this schema. And then I put in a footnote here, and you go down to the footnote, and it says, I know of no source that explores the conceptual affinities between Aristotle's enthymeme and Kenneth Burke's concept of courtship. But they both involve the social dance of transcending estrangement and aligning the positions of both speaker and audience. I'll probably work that over a little bit. That's the kind of what I'm getting at here is Kenneth Burke came up with this really awesome concept of courtship to describe kind of how we use symbols and how symbols use us. And he talks about courtship in relation to social estrangement, which is this notion that like we are strangers to each other, like neighbors, people that we pass all the time, people we see just living their lives, going by our view and so on. Everyone's kind of strange, this idea of estrangement. And Burke's idea here is that courtship is this kind of symbolic process, this dance that we kind of use to overcome estrangement, how we make sense of the other, how we sort of fantasize and narrativize one another and imagine one another, and also try to appeal to one another as like either the same or different from. That's where his idea about identification and division kick in. And so that's kind of what I was playing with, and just sort of connecting in a subterranean way Kenneth Burke's idea of courtship with with Aristotle's original idea of the enthymeme and how it involves this kind of inferential process of making guesses about the other, right? The basic point is that there is this interesting connection between these two concepts, and I don't really know of anyone who's tried to like explore that or has written about it. So my colleague, Justin Eckstein, who I've written with before, and we're also working on a project right now, a different one, and he has been talking about how he has been using ChatGPT in his own research and writing as a like research tool. He's like, It's very valuable. You can do a lot of interesting things in there, right? So I had it up as I was writing and working through this part, and I thought to myself, this is the perfect opportunity to like see what this ChatGPT thing can do. So I went into the little interface thing and the chat, whatever it's called, just like typing in, and I typed in, has anything been written on the conceptual relations between Aristotle's enthymeme and Kenneth Burke's concept of courtship, which is a pretty specific and sophisticated question, but that's the whole point of these things, that they're supposed to be able to like not understand, but like work with prompts of all kinds and respond in ways that more or less make sense, right? So, and sure enough, I put that in, and the system kicks back almost immediately, like, yes, there are two sources that talk about the relationship between the enthymeme and courtship. The first one is called The Rhetoric of Courtship in Elizabethan something, something, something. So it seems right off the bat to be interesting, right? And the other one, it says, is an essay by Richard Weaver called The Rhetoric of Courtship, a critique. That one blew my mind. Okay, so right here, because I have it nearby almost always, is Richard Weaver's The Ethics of Rhetoric. This was over on my bookshelf where it lives. This thing has been taped together. It's all broken up. It's all marked up. I've been using this book for a couple of decades, teaching from it, thinking through it, writing with it. So I'm pretty familiar with The Ethics of Rhetoric, but this machine told me that in the 1963 edition of this book, edited by this guy named Johansson, that essay appears. So I spent a good 20 or 30 minutes trying to locate that edition of The Ethics of Rhetoric, right? It does not exist. Nowhere. I even asked it, where can I find this book? And it said, you should be able to find it on Amazon or like Google or whatever. Well, I couldn't. Now, that Johansson guy who is alleged to have edited that version of this book does exist and actually did write a little bit about Richard Weaver back in the like late 70s and 80s, I believe. Now, I found a piece that he wrote where he was talking about Richard Weaver, but he never mentioned courtship, okay? So that was a total dead end. But I went back to the thing and I said, what was the original publication date of Richard Weaver's essay, The Rhetoric of Courtship? And it said it was originally published in the journal, the Southern Speech Journal, in 1963. I was so excited. I know this journal. It is now known as the Southern Journal of Communication. It still exists. So I went into our library's databases, and sure enough, we have that journal and we have online access. And so I was able to go back to 1963, and I looked through all 4 issues associated with 1963, scrolled through and looked at every single thing in each one of those 4 issues, and guess what? Nothing. Nothing by Richard Weaver at all. I went into the journal's search bar and I wrote in Richard Weaver. Nothing. Nothing on courtship. Now, this was like 2 kinds of a bummer because, first of all, I got really excited when I thought that Richard Weaver had wrote an essay on the rhetoric of courtship, because Richard Weaver's a major 20th century rhetorical theorist, and so with Kenneth Burke, and I've never in all my years heard about the fact that Richard wrote directly about something that Burke wrote about. Does not look like it exists. But when I asked it that question, what was the original publication of that article, it said the journal, and then it said then it was reprinted in an edited volume on Richard Weaver by the rhetoric and political communication scholar Roderick Hart. Now, I know Roderick Hart, not personally, but I've seen him give talks at conferences. I'm familiar with his work. He was at UT Austin. He retired not too long ago. He was a major figure in the field for a long time. Great rhetorical scholar, great political communication scholar. And I looked up his writings, all of them. And there was no edited volume by Richard Weaver that came out in 1979. It doesn't exist. Now, you might have heard that ChatGPT has hallucinations. So maybe this is not like terribly informative for you. But for those who didn't know much about this or didn't know about these hallucinations, this is what can happen. And what blew me away is, like, I'm a I'm a pretty astute scholar of the field of rhetoric in the United States and like on these issues. And I got really excited to think that there was stuff that I, didn't know about and I could find. And I don't know if there's even a grain of truth. I mean, that Johansson guy does exist or did exist and did write a little bit about Richard Weaver, but I'm very confused about the process by which that chat thing was able to say with such like dead confidence, like, yes, this exists. Here's where it exists. And then I finally said, I think you're wrong. I can't find it. And it was like, oh, if I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. I have limited, whatever. But like, it's just a little bit of a story about how sort of powerful this thing is, because it can kind of spit back information that looks and seems really good, But, and I don't know like the rate of hallucination. I don't know like the sort of how frequently this is, but that to me is a little bit of an alarming sign in terms of like what you ask it to do and what it seems to do for you, but might not actually be what you want or need, and it can actually send you in bad directions. So I don't know. I feel like on 420, that's a good kind of story to tell, because to be honest, we are living in the future, right? Like 20 years ago on 420, you might like kick back and fantasize about a world in which a computer can like talk to you and answer all these crazy questions. And like, we're here. Elon Musk just gave an interview a few days ago talking about AI, and now you got to take most of what he says with a grain of salt because he's in the AI game, and I think he wants to like slow things down. But there's like real concern about what could happen and very quickly, because these things, they learn, right? They evolve. Anyway, so I would love maybe to hear any kind of like experiences or stories, or like, I wonder if you're using it. I would not freak out if I heard that my students were using this as a kind of research tool in thinking through certain parts of papers or trying out ideas, right? I get it, I think, right? But please do be mindful that like there are landmines in there, and it can seem like it knows what it's doing when it might actually not, right? And so, if you want to share any stories or like cautions or, I don't know, experiences, or if you just want to sort of ask questions or talk about it, maybe we can set up a discussion room, because I think this is one of the hottest topics on Earth right now, and potentially one of the most consequential. Not like we don't have anything else going on, right, in terms of like all kinds of big issues. But here's another one. AI is sort of upon us, and we're not talking about general AI yet. We're not talking about consciousness, but we are talking about things that are able to replicate reality in such scary ways. I read something about maybe a Drake song that one of these things created, and it like fooled a bunch of people. So like, I would plead with you to like take the analog approach for the most part. Books, papers, your brain, right? Like maybe you can like use that thing to just kind of ask low-level, small kind of quickie kind of questions. But I don't know how much you want to rely on it is the point. Anyway, I have been having a wild time working with it and just thinking about the implications of it. A little bit it's coming into that paper I'm working on, so it's weird to be like using it and kind of writing about that same kind of stuff at the same time. Weird, wild times. Anyway, gang, I just wanted to kind of like talk to you, throw out a story, and maybe address a kind of a key important issue of our moment, and also just to say hi. I feel like we really haven't interacted too much. So I hope everyone's doing well out there. Everything's graded, maybe a few stragglers here and there, but the big stuff's graded and done, so now it's really just like, hunkering down and getting ready for that final paper and test. I'm still here. If you want to come by, if you want to set up an appointment to talk, I have talked with a few of you, have lovely conversations. So, all's well. I hope you're well. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're having a good semester. Good luck wrapping up, and we'll hopefully see you soon or talk to you soon. Take care.